KKHT wants you to meet three of the classiest guys in real estate.
I am Chris Kelso, the maestro of mortgage.
I am Rob Cook, the godfather of real estate.
And I'm Joe Orsack, the king of credit swing. And together, we're
the Real Estate Rat Pack.
Much like us, real estate right now is smoking hot. So whether it's buying, selling, or owning, you need to check out the Real Estate Rat Pack.
They're here to take your calls and answer your questions live. Call now, 1-800-808-5548. And now, the Real Estate Rat Pack.
Well, you guys are particularly enthusiastic considering how late you all got home last night.
Late, 4 o'clock in the morning is not late.
Well,
it's early, actually. You got to get your time frames correct.
I understand that.
And then a big shout out to Dave with Capital Title, who's in the house right now and brought our first guest of the morning.
Dave Dickinson,
Yeah, Dave.
with our wonderful sponsor, Capital. And so, Wayne, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
And it was really funny because we always get people to friend us on Facebook. And then, of course, Wayne posts on there his traveling mode, and he had a truck with a kayak on top.
Be prepared.
And I like that. Then that's his whole thing. Be prepared, especially in real estate and in Houston right now.
And so we're always curious, people get into real estate, and we're in another life. And so tell us tell us a little about your career and how you started.
Well, thanks, Rob. First of all, I want to thank Dave Dickinson with Capital Title for inviting me this morning. I appreciate that very much. And Chris, Rob, and Joe, thank you for having me on the show.
Well, don't thank us yet. You're just starting.
you don't know what's going to happen.
Wait till the end of it.
Why did I do that?
Well, I do have a former life, although it's been, I've been in the real estate business for quite a while now. It's been almost 25 years, almost a quarter of a century. I'm not a native Houstonian like a lot of Houstonians. I'm a transplant from the Northeast. Got here in the early 90s and have had a few different positions in real estate. I was in property management for a little while, and then most of my career has been in new home sales in the Woodlands area and the Spring areas. And then just 2 years ago, I started with Keller Williams, the Woodlands and Magnolia. And I've really enjoyed the transition in the past 2 years and being able to help different people in different situations rather than the new home deal.
Wonderful friends, Cindy Heyman and Tina Brickhouse.
And Tina Brickhouse, that is correct, with Bruce Kink and Diane Kink up there as the OPs, I think. And
correct.
Yes.
We've got a very dynamic office, a lot of energy. We've got about 450 agents, so I think we're number 3 in the world in terms of number of agents for Keller Williams, after the mothership in Austin and then the one here in Houston.
Yeah, the Metropolitan.
Metropolitan.
Has 500 and some odd. So.
Yeah, so it's a growing market. The Woodlands is an amazing place, so I really do love living and working in the Woodlands.
Well, and speaking of Woodlands is absolutely amazing. It's been growing. It's been nonstop, multiple offers, a lot of growth and activity going on there. Want to take one step back of what happened this week. How did the rain impact you this week? How did the weather impact the Woodlands area?
Personally, I have not had any situations where it's affected my buyers and sellers. I'm sure there are a few situations here and there because, like real estate, everything's local. Same thing with flooding. I mean, you can have flooding in little pockets here and there. So there may have been a few stories that I'm not aware of where there's been some water issues, but it really does affect everybody in terms of things like appraisals and getting homes closed, because if you got a disaster area.
Talk a little bit about that. Chris and I were talking about that earlier in the week, and he was posted out there on Facebook so people be aware. A lot of people were shocked. They weren't aware that was going to happen. So, I mean, basically I understand that when you have a disaster or declared a disaster area and there's closings that they're required.
It's not necessarily for so what happens is if you have an existing property and an existing appraisal, okay, and then let's say something like the storm comes along during that interim, a lot of times the investors are going to go back and look and see where that disaster area is, and they're going to request what they call a final inspection or
perhaps ask if the comp is still there.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a good question to ask.
By the way, is it still an asset that we're going to be able to insure? So, and we were talking obviously before the show with Wayne in regards to, it's pushed back a couple of them. Most of the ones that have been pushed back, though, have not been because of an appraisal reinspection. It's been because individuals have now gone back in the home with their inspector and said, wow, we actually found leaks in the home or some issues in the home that were not there when it was dry. And so, and something like that happens. How does that work, by the way? I mean,
actually, I do have a situation like that currently. I have I'm representing the buyer and the sellers in anticipation of moving out. They've started to move out. They discovered some water damage and some mold growing. So this was after the inspection was done, and now my buyer is thinking, hey, what's going on with this? We have to sort of investigate this and make sure it's remediated correctly. So they're going to have to send out an inspector again, make sure everything's good prior to closing. So
I know a guy.
Yeah.
Well, we got Vaughn Peterson in the house, and he'll be talking later.
Yes. Yes.
That very thing.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, anyway, continue on with the story. So how is that transaction proceeding?
Well, my buyers are coming in from out of the country, actually, so they have never even seen the home, believe it or not. That's kind of the crazy market we have, a lot of reloads in the Woodlands, so they are coming in to see the home for the first time this coming week, actually, and so they're going to get the opportunity to investigate this discovered water issue, mold issue, and we'll just follow up with the agent representing the seller and the sellers and make sure it's corrected prior to closing.
So what was their comment when they saw all over the news and all over Facebook and all over social media? It was like Lake Houston extended, all the roads and all the streets.
It was just like Lake Houston.
It was just like Lake Houston.
Yeah.
What was their reaction to that? Had they ever seen anything?
People are seeing that across the country, and I mean it's big news, and it does affect us. Those of us who have been here a while in Houston. It's not all of Houston. It's the same areas, the low-lying areas that get it. So, it's kind of the panic. People who are not familiar with the area just think it's everywhere. It's really not that bad.
Well, we were talking earlier in the before the show about the Brazos River. The rain was Monday and Tuesday, the substantial part of it, but now it's starting to impact that area now because the rising waters move slowly.
Mandatory evacuations, yeah.
So,
and a lot of times they don't realize is, if you look at that storm cell that came through on Monday
night,
it came all the way through up from all the way down in the valley area, pushed all the way up through past Austin, San Antonio, all the way over here, all the way kept going sort of northeast, I guess. But it was huge.
Yeah.
And so, what happens, the reason why these, it takes a week for these rivers to crest is because all this water is now running down from other areas.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, without mitigation of any kind, because that's what we were talking about. I was talking to the Shabbat team, which is in our office.
Right.
They said, well, even though the bio had been dredged out multiple times, said he'd been through all the Allison and everything like that, his house in Maryland didn't flood until this event.
Right.
He said all development out west, if you don't put enough mitigation in there or basically to offset the ability to absorb water, it has no place to go. It has no place to rush out.
Wayne's solution to that, by the way, is very simple. If you're move to the Woodlands. That is correct.
That's
call
right.
him and move to the Woodlands.
Yes, call me. Would you like my phone number?
Yeah. We will certainly give you an opportunity to give that and your email address and website as well. So,
yeah, and you were mentioning international. How are you seeing that international side up in the Woodlands?
Well, oil and gas is, of course, very big here, in addition to the medical and other industries. So, those folks are expats. They move to and from the States. And the Woodlands is a big, of course, with ExxonMobil and just the general quality of life. The Woodlands is kind of on the top of the list. So we get a lot of those folks looking in our neck of the woods, and it's our job to help them.
And you'd mentioned, obviously, you came from the new home building, the new home area. How was that transition? Let me know how it's helped you, and then more importantly is how that transition is, and because it's a specific role that you do, obviously, when you're a new home builder, but then you get to change that role completely when you become an agent.
Yeah, it is. It's really a double-edged sword. A lot of similarities. It's still real estate. I'm still helping clients with their real estate needs. As an employee, essentially, of a home builder, I am helping the buyers and helping them pick out the floor plan that meets their needs, all the details of designing the home, the colors and so on. But it's kind of like it's a retail situation. I'm in one neighborhood. I'm the expert there. Being a realtor, I really do enjoy this side of the desk a lot better. It's still helping clients, but I'm not just helping buyers. I'm helping sellers. I get to see different parts of the marketplace, all different price ranges, and I really do enjoy the challenge and the freedom to explore other markets.
I think it's interesting. One of the things, because we see a lot of individuals end up moving out, from that home building side. And what's interesting also, you bring into play, though, a lot of what those technologies or what the home builders have built for a long time, sort of what people are looking for. Some of the tricks of the trade, for lack of a better word, that the builders might or might not use.
That's right. And that's kind of one of my strong points, is that I'm able to help my buyers understand the advantages of a new home. I am still pro new home because I think there has been so many advances in technology, energy efficiency, things like that you don't get with a home that's even 10 years old, for that matter. So I'm very versed in that, so I can counsel my clients on what to be aware of and being able to compare a new home compared to a resale.
I like that. Yeah.
So we always talk about lifestyle. People don't really buy homes anymore; they buy lifestyle. So when you get some expat coming from another country, another state, what are they looking to find?
Yeah, they need to. It's my job to explain the advantages of certain communities, what amenities are in the neighborhood. Of course, the Woodlands is. In fact, just last night I was at the Woodlands Pavilion. There was a Led Zeppelin concert with the Houston Symphony, and it's a free concert. It's just amazing. Right outside your front door in the Woodlands, there's so much to take advantage of as far as dining opportunities, shopping, entertainment. And then you got to talk about commuting times. So helping your clients. Where are you working? Where are you going to be going to, so they understand the day-to-day getting around.
Is there a lot of commuting time here in Houston? I would never guess that.
It's only 15 minutes to downtown, right?
Right.
Well, for random people.
Depends on how deep the water is.
So what particular amenity do they look for when they come in? A lot of them come from other countries. They look for security. They're looking for gated communities and things like that.
Correct. You do get that question, and you got to be careful on how to answer that. There's nothing that is perfectly crime-free. There is potential danger anywhere, even in the Woodlands. But yes, in general, that is an attraction to the community. I think the crime rates would bear out that you have less of those crime situations, and it's generally a more affluent community, so people are attracted.
And I'm sure probably the number one question is going to be coming out when people are coming in from other places now is going to be, does it flood?
Right. Absolutely. Yes. We are coming up almost against a break. I want you to let the listeners know how they can reach you, if you don't mind.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that, Chris. Well, I'm with Keller Williams in the Woodlands, and my phone number is 713-805-3861. I'd also love it if you could check out my website. It's at www.WaynePhillipsProperties.com.
WaynePhillipsProperties.com. He is the agent who travels with a kayak, by the way.
Yes.
So you
if you're
never
stranded,
have to
call
worry
him.
about it. If you're stranded, give him a call. He's a very good kayaker.
I'm a lifesaver.
And he's not leaving anywhere. We're still bringing him back in our last segment, but we do have to take a break right now to acknowledge all of our sponsors, including the great Tim O'Neill, who's here
in the house.
In the house.
Thank you, guys.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Lovely. You know what? You're so lovely. And oh, what you do to me.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back. Time flies, you're having fun, or in the case of a lot of our guests, going to get coffee, right?
I'm lonely.
We're lonely. We've never done this before. Man. Exactly. Tim, how you doing, buddy? What have you been up to today? This is the great Tim O'Neill with State Farm. Our great sponsor, great individual, and an individual who's actually in the house to talk a little bit about how the storms are impacting this world right now.
Holy cow, this is
that's a lot of
the
pressure.
worst week ever for Tim.
Well, it happens all the time. Flooding, when we tell people that, and others have said it.
The only person that's still left standing, right?
Rain happens.
If it rains for 3 days in your subdivision, you're going to flood.
Right.
But the potential is there, and sellers will tell you, or the prior owner, it was never flooded here, and all these discussions are taking place in the context of properties where the lender is not requiring flood insurance,
right? Absolutely.
Where it's optional, and so too many times people interpret that when they hear, okay, I'm not required to buy flood insurance, and they interpret that to mean I'm never going to have a flood.
Well, doesn't optional mean savings?
Well, it does, because when somebody, if they're in what's called a preferred risk,
Right.
where it's $425.
Right.
That's how much they're saying no to, and having to, fade the risk of having this happen. And so you save $425. Great job.
Yeah.
No.
Not much of a savings though if you had to. And again, you get enough rain in a short enough period of time.
Anywhere.
Houston's flat.
That is correct.
And we have so much. The clay soil absorbs only so much water, and
That
at
is
some
true.
point it just runs off at that point.
Most time people don't realize, though, y'all have a great rapid
we're not in
response team that
Kansas
comes
anymore.
in. Obviously from a State Farm perspective, and is really good on the ground. I mean, everything I've always seen and heard from State Farm in regards to their response on national emergencies like this is just phenomenal.
Well, in flood, it's an NFIP thing now.
Okay, gotcha.
And
Okay.
I saw them in concert.
Yeah.
That's a National Flood Insurance Program.
Right, the National Flood Insurance Program. They send out the adjusters, but we're still able to counsel our customers during the claim process and let them know what's going on. But
It's a difficult process to get.
It's very rarely do you have a great outcome, because the coverage is limited. And
limitation's $250, isn't it? On
yeah,
flood
that's
insurance
typically, and it's not meant. It's basically disaster relief. Under a different.
It's not necessarily meant to
package.
rebuild your house.
It's not meant to put it back all. It's not going to be.
And
it's never going to be like it was.
On your goods and things like that, and flood was the cause of loss of your personal belongings. What does it usually cover?
Well, it covers all of your personal belongings, but it doesn't pay replacement costs. Flood insurance, like if you have a fire, God forbid, and your homeowners, we're going to give you enough money to buy all new things and then put it back like it was. But flood insurance, it's cents on the dollar. Everything's depreciated, and but like we've seen just now, you don't need people. They think that you need a 4-foot rushing wall of water, but really 1.5 inches of water in your house is all it takes. And so even if you don't have, water up to the gutters, then
Can you talk?
So
a little bit.
instead of a foot, 1 inch is better?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Would you discuss a little bit about the difference between flood insurance and rising water? Because we hear on the news right now, some people, their insurance isn't going to cover because they didn't get flooded. They had rising water issues. So what's the difference there?
I think there's a misnomer there, because rising water
It is a flood, yeah.
That's what a flood is.
Well, there's it's on the news saying that some of the people that, even though they have flood insurance, they're not covered. So what reasons would they not be covered?
I can't think of one, because
They don't have the insurance.
Yeah, they don't have the insurance.
They said
you
they
can get
had
a flood.
flood
You can get a
insurance,
flood from
goofball.
like a broken pipe, and normal insurance will cover that.
Yeah, we call that water. We call in the industry water damage means when you have domestic water coming out of your pipes where it's not supposed to is water damage, and flooding is natural disaster related. But you can have you have accumulation of rain. rising water is the accumulation of rain. And then you can also have rushing water and velocity zones and all those kinds of things. But if it's water coming in your house as a result of flooding in the area, there's not.
Well, let's talk about
there's not a distinction.
What if it's coming through the roof and causing damage?
Well, that's homeowners.
Okay, so that is covered.
Yeah. While the rain is falling, it's a homeowner's problem. Once it hits the ground and begins to accumulate,
rise up.
then it becomes a flood insurance
And
problem.
it's not flood if it comes from the sky, unless you're Noah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes.
So there a lot of arcs out there last week.
So is there a difference with surge, like if it's a hurricane type thing, if there's surge water versus?
Yeah, well, tidal
surge.
Tidal surge.
Is that still flood? Same.
It is.
Same thing?
It is. It's tidal waters and wind-driven tidal water. Katrina was a big learning experience for everyone, because you had both. You had hurricane-force winds and torrential rains blowing and gushing and storm surge at the same time. And it was heartbreaking, because you saw a lot of examples of homes that weren't there anymore. There was just a slab, or sometimes not even. Or in the case of elevated homes, there were a couple of piers and pilings left, but the house was gone. And so the question was, did this house actually sustain rain and wind damage before the storm surge came and made the house disappear? So they were having this totally abstract claim situation, because really, if the house sustained wind and rain damage before it was completely destroyed, there was actually some payment due, because the loss occurred, and then the house was completely removed from the scene it was.
One of the questions I had.
I was there. I have photos.
Yeah, I had a lot of agents talk about this. Is that their house was flooded and they needed immediate help of some kind. What's the first thing they should do? They've got maybe 2 inches of water in the house.
Well, you should always understand it's still your house. It's your property. Even when in any kind of insurance claim, it's still your house, and you do what a normally prudent person does. You protect your property from further damage, and you begin the cleanup process. And you never want to feel like your hands are tied because I can only do what the adjuster says I can do. It's your property, and you're expected and required to start to mitigate the loss and clean it up and protect it from further damage. And in case of if it just means saving receipts and taking pictures so that you can show that you did what a reasonably prudent person did.
You can actually have those little pumps that you can actually pump out water out of the house pretty quickly. Even the ones that are driven by electric drills and things that are very inexpensive to have one of those around if you're in a flood-prone area.
And then you talk about what a prudent person would do, but we have Vaughn here. I mean, so you have to measure.
Well, that's what you call
And a prudent person may not go wading through floodwater because it's nasty. So sometimes if your house is up to your kneecaps in water, then no one would recommend you going in there and doing anything.
I've been pumping out to the outside for like hours straight, and it keeps staying the same level. I don't know.
Joe, stop pumping. Joe, stop pumping. Right? No more pumping for Joe.
Right.
Question: when you're saying cleaning up, insurance, because obviously we have black mold issues and things of that nature, and after it's raining and flooding, it gets so hot and sticky and humid, perfect for mold growth. Would insurance pay for mold remediation outside of the normal processes? If we have someone that can actually sterilize a home and the homeowner finds a different way, how would the homeowner go about producing invoice or suggestion to utilize a different vendor than you're used to?
Well, the flood insurance contract says it covers direct loss by and from flooding, meaning it got wet. When you transition from it got wet to it got mold and mildew and other sorts of factors like that are associated with a house that has no power typically, because now the air conditioner's not going to run, and so there's policy language in there that controls, and it basically says they're not going to pay for any damage that was within your control to prevent. And so if your house is totally full of water, there's definitely going to be mold growth. And as long as to my understanding, as long as you didn't neglect it, if you didn't just say, this is a great time to go on vacation, let's just beat feet and get out of here.
So you're saying
I don't want to deal with all this
if you
wet
do
stuff.
that and your house becomes a mold circus, you're going to have a problem under the.
We'll leave the windows open
because they will hold you to a standard of care of your own property.
So you have to go down with the house, basically.
We went on vacation before. And you're gone 3 days, and then the flood happened.
And no one can.
And no one can hear that question.
That happens. That happens.
Vaughn
Here's this thing.
Here's
this thing we call a microphone, Vaughn.
Okay.
I actually had that in a non-flood situation where somebody had a hot water heater burst, but it was in a period they had just left, and it was a period where it was raining, and everybody's driveway was wet.
For the sake of everybody outside of the room, what was the question?
Peace, brother. The question is, what happens if someone, say, leaves on vacation 2 days before that rainstorm? We got 11 inches overnight, and now their home is underwater, but they don't know it because they're in New York seeing a Broadway show. What happens?
Well, the standard is, in the end, did you behave like a reasonably prudent person would have behaved, or did you cause the situation to get worse? Did you neglect? Were you neglectful? So I think it's just a subjective.
Yeah, again, it's very subjective for Vaughn because you keep saying prudent person. So he's really struggling around that.
And the policy language is if it was within your ability to control and you didn't, then you're going to have a problem.
So I think what I'm hearing is that you're not going to be covered under flood, but you are for fire. So if you have a flood, let it dry out and light it up.
Right?
Yeah, that was exactly what he was getting at.
Common in the earthquake scenario when you have
the opinions of our guests are not necessarily the opinions of the Rat Pack, by the way.
Just make sure.
Or any prudent person.
Or any prudent person.
And now we're talking about prudent and law-abiding.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back from the break, I will discuss some of the language, some of the wording that's used when I treat homes to get rid of mold, because you don't use the M word. You don't say mold. But there are some things that insurance companies will pay for that I've had experience with. So when we come back from the break, we'll talk about that and about what to do if you're one of these people right now that without flood insurance and you have water in your home.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back. You know, time flies when you're having fun. The break is always great. You know, we've been speaking a lot about prudent people, but to get off that subject matter, we now are going to speak about Vaughn.
Welcome back to the Gina and Vaughn show, by the way.
I don't know if we should have a camera in the studio. I'm kind of nervous about that.
Yes. Yeah, when Gina comes in, it becomes X-rated.
I'm not sure everybody heard that, but that's okay.
Yeah, she said, stick at what you're good at.
No, I heard it. Thank you
for all the
repeating
listening
that.
audience, though.
So anyway, well, Vaughn kind of was doing a little segue
Teed
into
up
what he does, and he has a pretty amazing process by he gets rid of the. We'll call it mold, but we're not going to call it mold. So kind of talk about that process and what it looks like, especially for people who have just experienced getting a lot of water in their house and that fuzzy green stuff starting to grow.
That's right. That's right. What a lot of people panic when it comes to mold because we've had such
mold is coming.
Bad experiences in the past with different hurricanes and things that have happened. I'm so glad we've got Tim O'Neill here on the show today from State Farm because he is an insurance expert. He can address a lot of these things. He's a wonderful guy to know, great relationship to have. And what I do is I actually go in and sterilize homes after there's been a water incursion or a flood like we've had recently.
Talk about the difference between mold remediation and what you do.
Mold remediation, as it plays out through protocol, state protocol, and what we know here in statutes from in Texas, really came from New York statutes, New York state law. And it doesn't have as much to do with protecting the consumer or protecting your home or making your home safe again as it does with limiting how much money can be paid out. It's more of a legal thing than it is a protection thing for the people. So there are different types of mold remediation that fit the bill in terms of what the state protocol says, but that doesn't mean you're not going to end up without mold in your home.
Yeah, when I was talking about agents, I remember one time they had it. They needed to have mold remediation. They had a handyman come out with a bottle of Clorox.
It still happens.
And it still happens.
Yeah, it still happens.
Of course, if you do use Clorox, it's a 10-to-1 solution. It's a living organism, and it actually will shut down with a full amount of Clorox. It'll actually shut down to protect itself.
It's a kind of a thing where if you're listening today and if you've had flood damage and if you're freaking out about it, you don't need to. Because the first thing you need to do is to get your home dried out. Rob, you mentioned there are some small pumps. You connect these little pumps to either an electric drill, a battery-powered drill, or if you have power, they can have these little electric pumps hooked up to a hose, and that'll get the water out of your house.
As long as the water outside isn't at 4
As long
foot,
as the
like
water
Joe
outside is
talks about.
lower than it is inside. That's right. And some people, unfortunately, didn't have that problem. So, but first you have to get the water out. You have to dry the place out. As soon as water hits sheetrock, you're going to start having a mold problem because gypsum in sheetrock is food for mold. So it's a problem. Now, what I do, insulation too is a problem. You really need to, if you've got water over the baseboards and up in the sheetrock, then what you really need to do is dry it out and probably, have somebody look at it. But it's good to cut the sheetrock off in an area at least a foot above where it got wet because it will start growing mold. What I do is I come in and provide a sterilization treatment. It's electrocatalytic technology. It's not some sharp image or some alpine thing. It's a professional system that gets rid of surface and airborne pathogens. What people a lot of times don't understand is once you have mold, if you disturb the mold, it goes airborne, it sporulates, and it gets up in the ductwork, it gets in the condensation in the AC system, and it will continue to grow. I treated a house just the other day. One of the homes, one of the unfortunate people over off of North Braeswood that got a couple inches in their house. And when you walked in there 2 days after, it had a rank smell, and that is the pathogens that start growing right away.
We're going to be having a sporulation show in a little bit.
Yes, we will.
This feller uses a lot of big words.
He just rented that word today, so he's got to have it back tomorrow.
So they had a problem with this. I treated the home. I also offer a 12-month guarantee on the treatment. As long as you don't have additional water in the house, I'll come back and treat it again at no charge to make sure you're protected. This particular gentleman has a pregnant wife and 2 kids in the house, and the last thing he wants to do is get people sick. So this is the kind of work that I do. People will say, well, is that covered under insurance? That's something you need to talk to your insurance person about. However, the treatment that I do, actually the wording on the invoice is antimicrobial, antifungal treatment to eliminate airborne and surface pathogens. Nowhere in there is the M word used. And
so that's just code for mold.
It's but but you don't say it.
I just got to playing this soccer game. I need you to come in and do this antifungal treatment, if you don't mind. Powder, that's it, right?
Powder. That's what you need. Actually, Vicks works for that. You use Vicks. I'm serious. A lot of people don't know that, but I know it sounds like a joke. But this is what I do, and wow. I'm very busy right now. I have a lot of homes. I just did a church over the weekend. They got a couple of inches of water in it. It had a really funky smell. They did a water extraction process in there to get the water out, dried it out. I came in and treated it. They're very pleased, very happy. And they have a warranty.
Uptown will funk you up.
That's about right, in a Christian way. Yes. So there's there's a lot of people that have this problem, and I would just say if you're freaking out, because people freak out about mold, if you're really, having an emotional heart attack about that, give me a call. Vaughn Peterson at Clean Air Services. It's CLEANEAIR Services. You can Google it. You can find me on the web there, or you can call me at 832-276-6000, and I will help you. I'll help you get what you need in order to be able to handle it. Go ahead.
I was also going to say, Vaughn, and this is for personal reference as well as my clients, Vaughn has taken care of not only my clients, buyers, sellers, but also my investors. I have a lot of investors that purchase tear down properties or where we have to gut it and rehab. And obviously the homes are water damaged and just really gnarly. And Vaughn will come in. Term. It is a technical term.
Gnarly.
And nary. Do you like nary better? And Vaughn will come in.
Nary a one of them.
Absolutely. Vaughn will come in and provide his service. And obviously, investors are cheap. And for them to continue to use him over and over and over again, they see effective. Exactly. They see the value. Yeah. I've had multiple clients that are selling their homes, and what we do there is have Vaughn come in and look at the ductwork. And one of my recent sales had black mold all over the ceiling. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And with the client also said that they have not been able to sleep. They've been sick. The entire family was sick. Waking up with cough and choking. And after Vaughn's treatment, the whole family said that was the first night that they were able to sleep. So it's
I remember
very
that. She
effective.
said that was the first night they slept all night. Yeah.
Yep. Very,
and
very
I know
effective.
that water is obviously the big topic right now, but it's also really worth mentioning that this is extremely effective with pet situations as well when you have some pet funk.
Exactly, the dreaded cat pee houses. Yeah. And
that
cat
was what
dander.
I was referencing.
This is the only technology I found, the clean air technology that I use, that actually will get rid of cat dander. If you have a listing People come in and they love the house, but they're getting hives from cat dander in the area. It gets rid of that.
Also, food smells, things that get into the wall and gets absorbed in the wall.
Burnt curry,
cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
Do a lot of cigarette smoke.
Smoke,
and everyone's like, well, just paint it. And that just encapsulated. But since paint's porous, that smell comes back.
Even kills.
60 days,
In fact, we looked at one the other day that somebody tried to take kills to.
Yeah.
And it was a mess.
Yeah.
And, of course, stuff comes right back.
And this eradicates it completely.
Yeah. But I'm glad Gina's here this morning because I've done at least a dozen properties in the last maybe the last 6 months for customers. So it's good to have you here to speak to that.
And I can tell you also, I refer you out and you taking care of my clients as well. And, nothing but the highest of praise for you. I mean, you get in there, you were fast, you got it taken care of. I mean, and a lot of times individuals, they want to have somebody who can get in there, get this taken care of. It's not the easiest of processes, especially when Joe throws things on the ground like that. But
there's some stuff going on in Joe's corner.
Exactly. Joe's corner's got something going on right there. But I just give you a big shout out and let you know that everyone that I've ever referred you to has absolutely just spoken your praises, by the way. So.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thanks very much. It is the kind of thing where people have a tendency not to believe it until after I've treated a home for them, right. and then they they become a champion and tell other people about the service because it sounds a little too good to be true, but it's actually true.
We also have some clients that you visited with that their children have asthma, and even though they're buying a pre-owned home with no smells, they still want you to come in and perform just to make sure.
So Vaughn will come in and perform.
Yes.
That's right.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes, please.
Of course you were.
Yes. Being an accomplished trumpet player as well, by the way.
And I do get doctors will refer me to their patients with asthma or COPD or people undergoing cancer treatments because they have no immune system because this process sterilizes all the air in the surfaces and makes the home safe. Also, I think it's important to note that most homes are under $1,000. In fact, most of the homes I've been doing lately have been about $650. So it's way less than your deductible. You can avoid an insurance claim. It's good, and you get a 12-month warranty. So it's a win-win for you to help out. Not only when you have flooding situations and the calamity that we're facing now in Houston, but also just to be healthy for your kids' health and for your own health.
When you're talking about, of course, there's a lot of people that are advertising, they'll come out and clean your ductwork. So talk a little bit about that piece.
That can be a little dicey because when things are pushed through the ducts, you can actually separate the tape joints.
And the ducks don't like it either.
Ducks
really hate it.
Yeah, they do. So, and a lot of times you just stir up everything that's in the ductwork, and then it becomes airborne, and then you got more of a problem.
That was a perfect spot for a goat scream.
I know. I got 3 good ones, and I can't use it any of them right now. But it's a kind of a thing where it's best to sterilize the home and not stir up a bunch of things that are going to be problems. Not separate tape joints in the ductwork. And it's ineffective, and tons of great references, many of which are on the show today.
Joe, dead air, your turn.
I don't know. I was still dealing with running things through ducts.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah, exactly. Just leave it to Vaughn right there.
Good weather for ducks. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But Vaughn, as we always say though, is we bring experts on the show. And those experts know what they're talking about. One of the things we always hear, mold and mold remediation, but it's not only that. There's a lot of other aspects that I know and that I've heard of, that I've seen that you do, and that take care of things. Pathogens come in all different forms, shapes, sizes, et cetera, et cetera. So, we are up against a break again. Time flies, you're having fun. I want to give a big shout out, by the way, again. Wayne, we've had several people comment how good you were on the first segment, by the way, especially some of your teammates up there in the Woodlands. So I just wanted to give
Wayne
a big shout out to you. Yes.
All right.
Wayne's peeps are listening in right there. Anyways, but we are coming up against a break. We have one more segment with the great Gina. Stay tuned. We'll be right
Gina Devers
back.
I've got a song that I sing. I can make the rain go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The Barry White. Start your day.
Welcome back to the Mortgage Consummation Show.
I'm your guest host, Chris Kelso, here to talk about anything consummation and beyond.
We're getting to the point nobody's going to want to come back on the show.
That is true, right? But you've been hearing a voice here recently, and that voice who's been speaking throughout the show is none other but the great Gina Devers with Devers
She is
Delivers.
like a 3 or 4 timer on this show.
Yeah, it's great. She's a multi-timer with us.
She's a multi-timer.
Multi-timer over here.
A very experienced agent. Started when she was 12.
Thank
That
you.
is correct.
Thank you.
Yep,
Yes.
And she's 15 right now.
Absolutely.
And
So-
Pretty devious little smile there when we said she was like a multi-timer. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
I'm not
So
sure.
you're having some anecdotal stories about stuff that happened during the rain. I'm sure I know you work with a lot of investors and you're working with some buyers, and so
Yes.
this is an epic event. I mean, it's a
Absolutely.
historic event. How did it impact your business?
Multiple ways. We had 4 closings that were supposed to take place last week that none of them took place. We had to go back and do reappraisals. I called all my clients and had to re-walk properties, make sure there was no damage. I found 2 that had roof damage. It came through a lot of water in the ceilings and multiple things of that nature. My clients were furious that they weren't able to close, but the best thing for them is to find this out now, make sure it's taken care of before they close, and then close on the home that they wanted, not a broken home.
Nothing like a great rainstorm to see if you got any issues with the roofs.
Absolutely.
And leakage, or window leaking and things like that.
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of times the windows, that caulk starts shrinking after a while, and you can get a lot of water in through a window.
What starts shrinking after a while, by the way?
Caulk.
Shrinkage.
Especially, it sounded completely different than that, Rob.
Especially
because you
in
get
the
shrinkage
cold.
on both sides.
Especially in the cold.
Yes, there is lots of shrinkage.
I'm so sorry.
And so I knew this conversation was going to go down quickly.
Sorry.
But anyway, but you can get rain in a lot of different places.
Yeah, and it's all in how you present it to your buyers or seller. They freak out, and you just explain this is the best thing for them. They don't really understand the process, and when they're getting calls from their lender saying we've got to redo this or we've got to redo that, the inspection, or we've got to go back out, they panic. They panic and think, oh God, there's something wrong. We just have to reassure them, let them know, this doesn't happen all the time. This isn't the norm, but it's due to the circumstance. And they eventually calm down and eventually see why we do it, and they're fine.
Yeah, things go wrong, but most things are correctable. I mean,
Absolutely.
That's the issue. And of course, again, roof, lenders I know particularly are concerned about roofs because their collateral can be gone in a short time if you've got a bad roof. Period.
Well, I think we're concerned about anything associated with the collateral. Whether it be the roof or the sides or the ground.
But especially because water can do a lot of damage in a very short period of time.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why typically if there's a lender required repair, it's usually a roof or a slab.
Right.
And so that's what they look for. And of course, they're looking on the appraisal ahead of time. Of course, the appraisal probably didn't indicate anything about the roof.
Exactly.
But until this happened, and then all of a sudden, we do have an issue.
Right.
We actually had one that is an investment property, and the people that owned it prior, the downspouts, instead of having a foot on the end, they had it go straight down into the dirt, which I expressed to my client, well, this has to be fixed. It's washing out underneath the home.
Typically they tie that into like a 3-inch pipe that goes out to the street, so it wasn't tied into anything?
No, I dug down.
Wow.
To make sure.
She is a full-service realtor.
I
so if you want
am.
her to go out and dig down on your downspouts, she's the woman.
I service my clients. So...
wow, I got nothing.
You want to be service? Give her a call.
So
I think we need to rename the show the Innuendo Hour.
That's it.
Double entendre hour.
An Italian double entendre.
That's it. That is it.
But that's poorly done. Period. That was executed.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely wrong.
Well, we went out after the 3rd day of rain, and I was looking at it. The entire back side of the property, because of the rain, I did say backside, thank you, Vaughn, was washed away. You could see completely under the back of the property. So we had a structural engineer come out just to take a look at it and see pillars and what all was needed. And what he had told us is the whole backside and at least 3 foot in around the front of the property as well, the soil was gone. It's just been washing away. So good for us, bad for him. And if he wants the sale to go through, he'll have to get the pillars and get mud pumped back underneath there.
Oh, wow. That's extensive.
$19,000.
Mud pumped. Nothing about that sounds good.
Yeah.
Oh, no. You've never had a good mud pumping? I'll explain that later.
Yeah.
It's off air.
Wow.
Yeah,
Later on in Joe's corner.
Recently, huh?
Yeah. I think
Mud pumping.
I think he's going to go back to Joe's corner. I was hearing them do some remodeling over there a while ago.
Yes.
Dave Dickinson, he's over there remodeling our tabletop here. So
We don't need this part of the counter.
it's looking pretty good over there, Dave. Thank you.
Installing a shower.
My mom always said,
Absolutely.
We have to have the shower for the after mud pumping.
Yes,
So,
exactly. So now we look like we might have another series of rainstorms coming in. I understand.
Yay!
Tomorrow. So
Finally.
what? Yeah, yeah. We've had 6 hours of no rain. I
Yeah.
don't know what you can. So what are you going to advise your clients to do?
Well, we're going to be diligent in regards to making sure we are protecting the property. After we've already looked and gone around and checked the windows and other things of that nature. And I have talked to them about caulking, making sure that they've done what they're supposed to do on their due diligence.
We just lost Chris.
Uh-oh. Oh, caulking?
You and your caulking.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know.
You know how building remodelers are. They just want to caulk.
Yes, all the time. I have a special weapon for that as well. My own. And it's pink.
Good.
So
Sometimes you just have to tell the customer to get the caulk out.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
I
get
have-
after it.
There is special caulk,
Yeah.
believe it or not. So with that, we need to be prepared and double check. Even though it's not wet now, doesn't mean it's not going to be wet with the next rain.
Yes, our producer's just shaking his head.
He's
like,
there's always,
please don't go there.
always the opportunity to get wet.
Poor Josh. He's probably going to go back to the management and go, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
As we talked about,
I can't. I have a
the-
reputation to uphold. I can't participate in their show anymore.
Well, the ground is already so saturated, it can only take so much pounding from the rain. So it's just going to keep going and keep going. So we have to make sure that. Yes.
And,
Wayne, and you
it's
thought it was
great.
going to be a Dole show, huh?
Well, in between the innuendos, I think we maybe learned a few things on this show. I'm not so sure, but one thing we
There went
can
our
say is it
reputation.
is important for those of you out there that are not in the real estate business to contact a professional that can help you with these really serious issues. If you're on the north side, I'd love to hear from you. I also want to give a shout out to my beautiful wife, Kathy, my daughter, Katie, and my son, Will. Hey, you guys.
Good thing you got that in. You'd have been in big trouble had you not done that.
Yeah.
It's always important. Family, family is very important. In fact, Gina and I talk about this all the time.
All the time.
We're all in this industry, and we crack up, but we're a family here, and everyone we bring on is a family. And you have to keep in mind the reason why you do what we all do what we do. At the end of the day, it's to be able to enjoy moments like this, but it's also to be able to enjoy moments with our family, with the kids, with our significant others, and it's what makes this community such a beautiful community.
And of course, we're going to be missing you like the next 2 weeks.
That is correct.
Because you are going to be going to spend time with your family. You're heading somewhere.
Absolutely. I do have to spend some time with the family, and I do enjoy that every single year to be able to do so. But I know I'm leaving the show in good hands, though.
Oh,
who's coming in?
Oh, no.
Wait a minute. Nobody told me about this.
Gina might be taking a pounding, so be
Oh,
careful.
there we go.
Anyway.
Nobody told me about leaving the show in good hands. I don't know if I'm on board.
So
with
we're
this.
coming against the last few minutes of the show.
That is true.
So for
Do I
Wayne,
get
Somebody
to leave
qualified gets in
my
here. It's going to
number?
ruin our
Yes, you do.
reputation.
My goodness.
but Wayne's got the mic right now. So Wayne, what do you
Yes.
want people to leave with?
Well, I would love, again, I'm in the Woodlands with Keller Williams, and my phone number is 713-805-3861. I would love to assist you, whether you're thinking about making a move, putting your home on the market, or you're trying to find just that perfect home. Give me a call. Check out my website, www.waynephillipsproperties.com.
And Gina.
My number is 832-588-7251. And my website is deversdelivers.com.
So, and Vaughn, you're over there just. I know you want to lead the show with something.
Yes, exactly. If you need help, if you've got some water damage, flood problems, you worried about mold, call Vaughn Peterson at Clean Air, 832-276-6000.
And we've got Tim O'Neill right here next to me. Tim, advice.
If you would like to buy some tasty flood insurance, hit me up at ratpackagent.com. You're listening to the Real Estate Rat Pack Show. I'm the ratpackagent.com.
You know, and before we leave, by the way, we're up against a lot of time right here. We do have a caller right now. Eric is actually calling us. Eric, how you doing? Eric, are you there?
Me?
I heard something there.
I heard something there right at the very end.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
there
we got
it
you.
is.
All right. Hey, long
Eric,
time
you got a few
listener,
seconds here. How you
first-time
doing?
caller. I'm doing great.
We got 1 minute before the show's over. What you got?
Hey, I just wanted to tell everybody how great Wayne is. He's been my realtor and friend for years, and he'll bend over backwards for you.
Wow.
There's nothing he can't do.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate that.
So be sure to send him that $10 you promised him.
Right.
Hey, Eric, we're running out of time. Thanks for calling in, buddy. We appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Well, take us out, Chris.
You know, one of the things we tell everybody is I like to leave the show with a good quote. Today is no different, actually. It's a little bit appropriate. You know, we can use kayaking instead of the one I'm going to put in here, but it's like life is like riding a kayak. To keep your balance, you must keep moving, especially in this water that's been coming around and all this rain that we've
And
had.
and by the way, stay out of that water. It's not for recreation. It's full of bacteria, fecal matter, and everything else. Don't get in it.
Stay out of it. But I want a big shout out to all of our guests: Wayne, Gina, Tim, Vaughn Peterson, Dave Dickinson, everybody. Until next week, we are out.
And you've been listening to the Real Estate Rat Pack. The question is, who's Frank, who's Sammy, who's Dean, and who's the other guy?
Chris is Frank,
I'm
he's
Dean.
Dean, and I'm Sammy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So tune in to the really big show every Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on 100.7 The Word, KKHT.